Evolutionary.org Hardcore 2.0, episode 115 coming your way. So we're talking about Are Trainers and Coaches Worth It by Euro Pharma. So in this one, it's going to be a really interesting one. We're going to go over a bunch of topics. We're going to jump right into it. And let me go over the topics first. What is a coach? How do you become one? We're going to talk about are coaches really needed? We're going to talk about AI changes to coaching. We're going to talk about having a log and how important that is. We're talking about Euro Pharma products that coaches out there in bodybuilding recommend. And we're going to talk about why Euro Pharma is the best. But let's first talk about what is a coach and how do you become one. So let me start with there's so many different variations of coaches, and Mobster and I talked about it on the pre-show. You can be a bodybuilding coach and be living in your parents' basement, and making 5,000 a year or 10,000 a year or
Yeah.
20,000 a year, right? And you work at the gym down the street, you go in there, you try to sell clients. A lot of times when gyms first sign you, they'll be like, well, you get 2 free training sessions with a coach. Okay. So then you're like, yeah, let me do it for sure. And then they get you because you go and you work with the coach and the coach trains you a couple times and the coach gives you the pitch. He tells you, you know what, let's sign up for 5 classes for this much money and you work with me. What days are good for you? And then boom, they get you. And then they try to get clients that way and make a little commission. And that's where how those coaches make money in that. And look, at the beginning, you're obviously not going to make much because you have to build your clientele. But if you're good at selling and you're good at convincing them to continue to use you, you can definitely get more and more. And the key with sales is you have to be likable because nobody is going to want to work with you if you're not likable. And it's not just how you deal with the client itself, it's how you deal in the gym. Do the other people at the gym like you who work there? Do the other people who train at the gym, do they like you? Does the owner of the gym like you? Like it's a matter of being likable because nobody wants to sit there for 45 minutes or an hour and train with someone who they don't like. So it could be you're attractive and they like you for being attractive. It could be that they like you because they push you, but they don't push you too hard where they don't like you. They're like, fuck this, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. But they push you enough where you're saying, yeah, I'm getting my money's worth. Do you know how to talk to people without putting them down, but while still pushing them? Because that's an art. You got to be able to do that. So you got to be able to be good when it comes to sales at that level. Now, the other extreme, Monster and I talked about in the pre-show, is the people
Yep.
who train people like The Rock or
Yep.
people who are celebrities doing movies or top bodybuilders. I wouldn't even say top bodybuilders. So I'd start with actors and celebrities. Those are the
Yeah.
trainers that get
You
paid
make
the
more
big
money
bucks.
from them, mate. You will. Yeah.
$1,000 or $500 an hour for a session with these people. That
Yeah.
adds up, and they have a lot of clientele. Now, bodybuilders, maybe you can talk about that, Monster. How much do bodybuilder coaches make? Why don't you start there and then talk a little bit
Yeah.
more?
So there's been conversations online regarding how certain things went. I'm thinking of Neil Hill. And one of the people that he's working with, his name escapes me right now, but was a top professional. And the top professional kicked off and posted certain videos online. I think one of his videos, he was showing you his apartment, which I think at the time was in Holland. His name will come to me in a minute. And it was all scruffy and look at the life I'm living. And this is what was said to me, and that's what was said to me. And Neil came back, and Neil's very professional. He's really good at pushing them. He's really good at getting inside their heads. And his training facilities in this country, they're kind of a dump. But some of the top pros, I know personally people that have been there and trained, and the sessions have been absolutely fantastic. You are going to grow. He pushes you hard. He's worked with Flex Lewis, and he constantly got Flex to the body weight that he needed to be for the 212 class, and so on. Flex was a 7-time winner of the 212 Mr. Olympia. So he was undeniably good as a coach. And one of the things that Neil got into with this particular person was that he didn't necessarily make loads and loads of money from coaching you. As often as not, it was for not much money at all. If anything, what he would do is if I got you to this level, and this is what he was discussing openly after this pro bodybuilder kicked off. It was 2 things. I got money for you because I would introduce you to supplement companies that are willing to sponsor you. And you were giving me a percentage agreed in writing of your earnings. So if you earn $100,000, I got $10,000, like an agent, because I'd coached you into this condition where you won this competition, and therefore the sponsorships from these companies was that much bigger than it had been prior to that. And this is normal, acceptable kind of like you understand it. You're on $30,000 a year, now you're on six figures. You're on $100,000 a year. I'm asking for 10%. And he was also doing the same where he got a percentage of the winnings. So, for example, at the time that the conversation took place, I think the prize money was $250,000 or $300,000 for winning the Arnold, and $300,000 or something like that for winning the Olympia. So, had the fella won the Arnold and had the athlete won the Olympia, the potential was 60, 70, $80,000. Now, of course, the feedback from that becomes thus. So not only have you earned 60, 70, $80,000 from your client doing incredibly well, but they are obviously getting 90%, you're getting 10% of their earnings, or whatever percentage is agreed. You're also, therefore, more likely to be approached by supplement companies because of other athletes you're working with. You're more likely to get more clients and so on and so forth. So although you're not winning the 200 or 300,000, you're only getting 20%, sorry, 10% to 20,000, 30,000. If you've got 4, 5, 6 clients and they're all top 5, top 10 athletes in the world, then there's a good potential there for you to be getting a six-figure salary that way. And that's without anything else that you sell online and so on and so forth. So at the elite level, both that top pro bodybuilder coach-client relationship can earn you arguably six figures. But I'd also agree with something that Steve said earlier on, and we've talked about this. If I was working, let's say, for example, with Brad Pitt, and I had 100 clients, Brad's going to want me all to myself. He's not going to want to have me working with anybody else. I'm going to need to be with Brad at 4 o'clock in the morning before he goes on set and so on and so forth. So that's where the really crazy kind of money comes in. I've heard of people getting six figures for 3 months' work. For example, working with the actors that were in the movie 300. I've heard of $200,000, $300,000 being paid for someone that's coaching. Again, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, Steve, before the actor's 12 hours on set and whatever else. And keeping him in shape. Again, maybe Brad Pitt would be a good example in Troy when he played Achilles. And so having me not be able to work with my other clients who have to pay me not to work with my other clients for a short period of time, might be 6 weeks, might be 8 weeks. So yeah, there are definitely six-figure earnings to be made by that top level. And that's literally one-to-one in that particular example, Steve. We can get into, as we will, with regards to online, generic programs, etc., etc. But Steve's right. Let me finish off this segment with my last thought. So many, many years ago, when I literally left school, just about to start work, an opportunity came up for me to go and work in a gym. And it was very much what, like Steve said, you weren't really a gym instructor as such. You were half salesman and half gym instructor. And I, of course, was right at the beginning of my training career, competing, whatever else you want to call it. And I worked out that I was going to get paid more money for working in a factory, not living the dream, or in an office, not living the dream, as I was at the time, versus me going to work in a gym right in the financial district, central of central London, and living the dream, but getting paid a really small wage and maybe earning some commission. I would be much easier to be able to do that now, way more knowledgeable, loads more experience. But the idea that I would get paid minimum wage or whatever it was back in the day made no sense to me. And what Steve said, I've actually seen this when I was temporarily unemployed a few years ago. One of the big name companies here in the United Kingdom, and to a lesser degree in the States, is a company called Virgin. They do the airlines, they do this, they got cruise ships, etc. And they've also got a bunch of fitness places. And they do not directly employ any personal trainers. All of the personal trainers are subcontracted. And you are guaranteed a certain number of clients by the organization, but you pay your own tax, your own insurance, you pay for yourself to be requalified, etc. The gym does none of that. So in other words, we will give you this amount of clients, but you have to be available at these times. If you don't do these many clients, then we can take clients away from you, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, you are not employed by the company. So you really got to know what the hell you're doing in terms of salesmanship. And of course, let's be honest, Steve, some of the best coaches that you and I could talk about in the world with athletes and film stars and whatever else, that's not how they work. You don't need, you can, I mean, if I'm there at 4 o'clock in the morning working with Brad Pitt for a movie, he has to be in shape. That's not always necessarily a pleasant experience. Working with some of the top athletes in the world that are getting paid multi-million-dollar contracts involves hard work. But those athletes are ready for it. But the average businessman or person with disposable income that can afford to have a PT doesn't want their ass kicked. And at the same time, for you to earn a salary that can pay your bills, your mortgage, your car fees, whatever, on a monthly basis, make the payments, you cannot be kicking the ass of your clients and having them kind of being upset with how you spoke to them, making them super sore all the time. They don't want to come back to the gym. So it's a kind of weird situation in that almost you need to be a nice guy slash salesman, like Steve says, until you've got a really good base of clients, say 100 people to work with. And then there will be 2 or 3 from that 100 that does want their ass kicked. And arguably, potentially, especially with pros, you might make your name and therefore be able to raise your fees and work with a smaller group by working with these elite athletes. But you don't get to do that straight away. It is a long time thing. And it's not really the easiest of jobs. It's quite often a lot of work first thing in the morning and last thing at night. There's not that many clients during the daytime.
Yeah.
If you've got 10 clients, you've got to work when they want to work, Steve, which is, when they're not working themselves.
Yeah.
So
That's the
I wouldn't want to
hardest.
work that time of night. No.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing because a lot of people, when did they train? They train before work or after work. So you got to be willing to really have a morning routine or an evening routine where you're working. Maybe in the middle of the day, it's going to be older people, retired people, or people who maybe work as nurses or firefighters, EMTs, or who have, oddball schedules, where they're off for a couple days and then they work for a couple days. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about this topic before we move on, Mobster. And I want to talk about how to become a personal trader at a low personal trainer first at a lower level. And look, it doesn't require much more than passing a simple test. Look, it isn't
Yep.
a hard test. If you study for it, you'll pass it. I mean, easily. I mean, there's some dumb motherfuckers out there who have passed that test. Trust me.
Yeah,
You also
absolutely.
you don't need any sort of education or degree to qualify. So this also opens it up to a lot of people. Now you see, it's like becoming a realtor. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Or it's like being a lawn care guy. Anybody can do it. You don't have to have a fancy degree to do it. So you have a lot of people. It's a very competitive industry. So if you are planning to get into personal training or coaching, be aware that it's very, very, very competitive. And there's always people who are becoming personal trainers. So it's almost like most of you who get into it and become personal trainers or coaches and you want to make a career out of it, you have to be aware that there's always going to be every single day dozens and dozens and dozens of people in your city who are also becoming personal trainers, who are going to be your competition and who are going to be taking clients away from you.
Yes.
So you got to be aware of that. So you got to, it's one of those things that I always tell people, if you're going to do something like this, let it be a side gig. Have a real
Yes.
job and
Yes.
then do
Yes.
this as a side
Yes.
gig. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't,
Yes.
so what? And that's the commitment you have to make when it comes to time. So you can really be a personal trainer in the mornings, wake up early, 4 or 5 o'clock, like Mobster said, work for
Yep.
2 or 3 hours. And then in the evening, after your regular 9 to 5 job, you're going to work again from 5:30 to 8 or 9 or 10. That's what you have to do if you're going to make it in this. And then if you're making enough as a personal trainer, then you can quit your regular job. But essentially, the way things are trending, everybody, it's in your best interest to do both because one job, the personal training job is cyclical. Like I said, someone could show up at your gym
Oh, Christ,
who's,
Steve, how busy will you be in the new year with people's New Year's
yeah,
resolutions?
and then they're gone. So it's like
Yeah,
it's a cyclical industry. Even if
pre
you're
summer
doing good,
holidays.
you can't depend on it long term. Now let's talk a little bit about grifters in the industry who do online coaching. To
That
make
is a
it,
good mistake. Let me just cover something else as well. There are massive. You've probably got 100 different organisations in the states. And back in the day when I looked at this, because I've actually qualified twice, we had 21 well-known organisations, and the problem was the standard across those organisations varied so much. It's ridiculous. You had people that shouldn't be coaching people that were qualified, and some great coaches that hadn't qualified. So the UK government and the US local states, so state governments and organisations rather than federal, have tried at times to standardise the industry. In the UK, one did something called the NVQ scheme, National Vocational Qualification, that required all of those 20 odd organisations to at least adhere to a minimum standard. Some, like the YMCA, were fantastic, 20, 30 modules. Some I've literally done online, posted. I think I referred by letter. And another one you just reminded me, Steve. I went and paid for a course. I was the only person there. I knew all the answers, and yet every other person there was actually already doing the job via local sports centres, and they were hideously crap. They were proven. Steve's talking about the grifters. Look, let me go on start on the grifters. I'll bring Steve in. So we've seen six-figure people online via Instagram. I think one of them had to post their tax returns. And so someone had got hold of the tax returns and saw $700,000. And yet, the information that they were putting out available to their clients it became annoying because people also found out how often, and it wasn't just this six-figure person, others in the industry were doing it. They'd built up massive client bases, sometimes working with partners, 1,000+ clients. But every single person got the same training program. Every single person got the same nutritional advice. Every single person. It's ridiculous. You've all got specific medical conditions. You don't all want to get muscle. Some of you just want to get lean. Some of you have specific food allergies and so on and so forth. And the average was $100 at the time. It's probably more now, Steve. So there were people out there. One was the one we actually had this come up on the Australian forum, on the forum on the Evolutionary, where someone said that someone was going to put so many millions of dollars in the industry. And I actually went and looked at this person for them and came back and replied, and I said, he's not. He was working with a team of 5 other fellas, and they had massive client databases that they built up with people that had contacted them for one reason or another, and they were going to offer those client databases to companies that sold steroids. And the idea was they were going to bring $10 million, but they wasn't going to put $10 million in. They were going to just sell the client databases of people that were interested in PEDs to PED companies who would therefore make money and pay them for that information. So this is grifting on the grandest scale. What we really want, Steve, and obviously, and I'll bring you in now, is someone that actually, whether it's online or in person, pays a interest, genuinely wants to know what you want, creates a program that's specific to you, and whether that's nutritionally, whether that's because of medical requirements, whether that's just you getting into shape for a holiday or whatever else. You do not want a template that is the same for every single person, literally like a rubber stamped program. Yeah. It's not even adjusted on the fly, Steve. It should, even if it's adjusted on the fly, that's fine. But if it's just the same goddamn program for everybody, how are they working? How are they interested in your results? Back to you.
Yeah, another thing, what they do is they prey on the young male naive demographic, or they might prey on young females who are desperate to lose weight. So the young male demographic, look, we've all been there. I fell victim to different schemes. I fell victim to a Ponzi scheme when I was like in my early 20s. A friend of mine, he's like, Steve, you got to invest in this. You got to invest in it. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, this is a great investment. They do importing, all this stuff. It ended up being a huge Ponzi scheme that some church leader guy was doing. And we basically ended up losing all our money in the scheme. So, we fall for schemes. Looking back, I was like, what was I thinking? It was like so obvious that this was some type of scam because there's no such thing as easy money. So what these guys do, and they'll start out, they'll post pictures. A lot of the pictures are doctored. They'll post pictures of clients with transformations. It's the same shit. It's the same fucking shit over and over and over. They'll buy followers on these social media platforms. It's not hard to do. I mean, a few $1,000s, you can buy like 50,000 or 100,000 followers, right?
Easy,
these days. So they'll buy a bunch of followers and they'll pretend that there's some big shit, right? And then they'll try to sell you, as Mobster said, these scam programs that are just cookie cutter. And what ends up happening is they grow and they grow. And what they end up doing is they'll actually scale their business and they'll hire an assistant, pay the assistant like 40, 50,000 a year, just to reply to the emails for them. And then that's where they get the business going. So what ends up happening is what ended up happening with one dude, I think his name was Zimmerman or something. And that's what happened. He made millions
Yeah,
of
yeah,
dollars.
yeah. His the girls that were actually doing the work, Steve, ended up grassing him up.
Yeah,
He
because
was
they got
getting the six
pissed.
figures. They
So
were
at
getting
the end of
five
the day,
figures.
you're
He was
gonna,
getting six
yeah,
figures. Yeah, yeah.
they got pissed off because he gypped them out of money. So then they opened it up and they said, you know what? We've been the ones replying to everybody. It wasn't him. He didn't do shit. All he's doing, this guy does, is go party and lay at the beach and stuff. We're doing all the work for him, and he's making millions of dollars, and he's paying us 40,000 a year while he's making all the money. So this is what these guys do, and it's basically just a huge grip. So that's what online coaching has kind of become today, and that's why I don't do that type of coaching. When you come to me, you're talking to me one on one, as I'm talking to Mobster and I'm talking to you guys right now. You will
Yes,
hear my
exactly.
voice and I will talk to you, and we're going to detail everything. I don't do cookie cutter programs. People will ask me, Steve, can you message me a program? I say, no, I don't do that. We're going to talk one on one,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're going to find out what works best for you. That's what I'm going to do, because I can't live with myself just selling you some cookie cutter program. I would never do that.
Even on the forums, Steve, we occasionally get asked by someone, "Can you write me out a diet? Can you write me out a training program?" And Steve and I could do this, but again, you would need to sit down with them, even if it's like 1-to-1 on Zoom or something, Steve, and do that. I cannot, and especially if I'm helping other members on the forum in the way that you and I do as moderators, etc. I cannot spend an hour and a half of my time, especially not for nothing or for free, literally going over every detail that I would need to know in order for me to properly write out a diet or training program or whatever in terms of advice. So to do that properly is a proper job. It is proper time. And even if you're really good at it and fast, you're still got to ask questions. You've still got to know the person well. So generic responses, we can do small bits and pieces. And again, together with other people on the forums replying, we can build up a relationship with that person and get to know them. And then, of course, this is the reason why we encourage training logs, etc. But it's not something that you and I can do, because if we did it, it would be a rubber stamp formulation. This is the everybody needs to follow, including you. What do you weigh? Boom. There are online calculators. It's too easy. But to do it properly is a proper job. So, what about, do we think they actually need this, Steve? I'm going to say no for the majority of people. And I'll say why. And obviously, Steve can come in and agree or disagree. 90% of you listening to this show right now, with regards to Evolutionary as a forum, with regards to information that's available to you in terms of training, even some of you with apps on your phone, do not, for the most part, need a coach or a trainer or personal PT, whatever. Okay. You just need to apply yourself well with regards to how you're using the information that's available to you. What about the 10%? Now, this is where I think it applies, Steve. Whether you're an elite athlete, a movie star, that's more, I think this applies to someone that's about to take place in or has taken many times competed as a bodybuilder in a competition. And here's why I think it's useful. You will be tired. You will be depleted. How you see yourself in the mirror or in the photographs that you're taking as you get closer and closer to a competition can literally change by the hour. You can change by the hour, and how you perceive yourself can change by the hour. But when you are, in essence, Steve, dog meat tired, dog shit tired, carb depleted, fat depleted, on doing cardio till the cows come home to just get that on stage look that's required. Super thin skin, super depleted, and then feel that carb loaded, not carb loaded, am I drinking enough water, etc. That's when a coach is worth every single fucking dollar. And you almost want someone that is not necessarily nice in those circumstances. You want someone that is literally going to see you or look at you like a judge is going to look at you. But obviously, with regards to nutrition and training and PED advice. And when you're in that kind of state, when you're that one, I don't care if you're running around a track, Steve, pro bodybuilding, whatever. You are concentrating on getting yourself to the stage. The coach then becomes worth their weight in gold. So, what do you think about whether most people need it versus perhaps in those situations?
So some, people learn differently. And look, there's some very bright people out there who just did not do well in school. Really, really bright people, but they're really smart because they didn't learn the way the teacher was teaching. So you can have 20 kids in the class and 19 of them react well to the way the teacher is teaching, the style of teaching. But the one kid, even though they're very bright, doesn't. So people are different when it comes to that. And I used to be a teacher, so I completely get it. And we're seeing that, the more people study this stuff, the more people understand it. It's the same thing when it comes to this game, because some people need that coach to push them to succeed, whether it be like, let's say, example, you're buying a package for 5 training sessions, and the only time you have to train is 5:30 in the morning. And the coach schedules you for 5:30 on Monday morning, right? And you just on Sunday you watch the game, you were eating a barbecue, you wake up Monday morning, you're like, fuck, I don't feel like going to training. Are you going to train in most situations? No, you're not. But because you already paid for that session, and if you don't go to that session, you lose your money, you're probably going to go because you're like, fuck, I'm paying for the session. And if I don't show up, I still get billed for the session. So I better fucking show up. It's like going to the dentist or going to the doctor. If you don't show up, they still bill you
Yes.
that $50 or $75 for missing your appointment, right? It's the same thing. So that's the motivation to go. And then you got to reschedule the appointment. So, so it's one of those things. Some people need that. Some people need to be pushed to succeed. Some people need that personal trainer in the gym breathing down their neck to finish that last rep where you get that lactic acid and it's burning. When it comes to pro bodybuilding, I think it's very, very important and very, very necessary to have a coach.
Mm.
I've seen coaches in the gym with guys, and they're showing them all kinds of things. They're showing them the music. You got to go with the music. They're showing them posing routines. You got to pose. Oh, your front bicep shot. The angle is not right. Look at yourself in the mirror. You got to move the
Yes.
angle a little bit.
Yes.
These little things. How do you pose to show off your hamstrings? How do you pose to show off your calves? How do you pose with the people next to you? If you're a shorter dude and the guys going against you are going to be inches taller, how do you upstage them? That's important. And vice versa. If you're really, really tall, 6'5", and the dudes you're going up against are 5'6", 5'7", how do you not look like you're weird on stage? These are little things that a coach can help you with. They can help you with going into the competition, how to manipulate your water, how to do all these little tips and tricks that you need, because you don't want to think about that stuff. And there's a reason in any professional sport, NBA, NFL, hockey, baseball, whatever, they have coaches. They don't only have one coach, they have many coaches, and they have
Yeah. Yeah.
assistant
Different
coaches.
things. Different
There's
things.
a
Yeah.
line, there's a linebacker coach,
Dietitian,
there's a line
nutritionist. Yep.
there's a linebacker coach, and there's an assistant linebacker coach, and there's an inside linebacker coach, and there's an outside linebacker coach. It's like fucking coaches. You've got like three coaches coaching you at each position. It's insane how many coaches there are. And that just shows you how important coaching is, because I think Monster brings up a point. It's a different eyes on you that can show you. Tom Brady, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, maybe greatest football player of all time. He had coaches, and those coaches helped him succeed, whether it be at high school, college, NFL, whether it be his dietitians, whether it be his trainers, all kinds of stuff that he did. He needed coaches to succeed. So it's very, very important, no matter what, to have a coach, especially if you want to succeed at the highest level. That will make a huge, huge difference.
Yes.
But you got to
Yeah.
avoid the bad coaches. You got to avoid the incompetent coaches, because if you hire an incompetent coach, it can backfire on you. So you have to know that. And it can get very frustrating, because it's just like realtors. Most realtors are not good at their job. Most realtors fail. There's that 5% of realtors who actually make a damn good living being a realtor. And there's a 95% who are scraping by, who they might have sold one house in the past 2 years. And then there's other realtors who sell one house per month because
Yep.
they have built a nice clientele. They're people, they keep in touch with their clients. They send them a card every holiday. They send them a gift card in the mail. That goes a long way. So they keep in touch with them, and then this way the people remember them, and they're punctual, and they pick up their phone on Sunday. That's another thing. If you want to be a personal trainer, guess what? People on the weekend will want to work out because they work all week. So if you're not willing to work Saturday and Sunday, then you're in the
You're
wrong
losing
business.
money. You're losing money.
Yeah.
You're losing clients. I'm reminded of one thing here, Steve, and I've seen this whenever you watch any of these documentaries on YouTube or on the TV or whatever. You will occasionally see situations like, lifestyles of the rich and famous, Beverly Hills wives, whatever. And I've seen very big businessmen and businesswomen make the following statement multiple times. They will tell you that I am an expert in my field. When it comes to building houses, construction, building great big estates, building huge business blocks, etc., this is how I make my money. This is what I'm good at. But I'm not a personal trainer. So why would I not hire someone who's an expert in their field if I want personal training? So that's the way that they use their money. They'll say, I'm not a mechanic. I don't fix my car, but I've got this Ferrari. So I make sure that my Ferrari goes to the best shop, the Ferrari approved place with the best mechanics in the world. When I work with architects to build these buildings that I'm making money from, I hire the best architects and so on and so forth. So when it comes to personal training, if they suddenly decide that they want to get into shape, they will pay hundreds of dollars an hour to work with one of the best coaches that all buddies have recommended, or the best one they could find online, or their secretary look for them with research in the industry, and they will pay serious money because my time is worth money. If I work with this coach, I'm not making money. So therefore, if I'm going to work with them, I'm not going to work with someone that costs me $25 or $40 an hour. I'm going to work with someone that costs me hundreds of dollars an hour because I want every single minute that I'm with that person to be packed with me being coached to the best of their possible experience, to the best degree that they can bring to the table. Because every time that I'm away from the phone, or I'm away from my computer, or I'm away from the office, I'm not making thousands of dollars an hour. So my time is super, super important. To the point sometimes, Steve, where I've actually seen, I think there's a massively rich Arab sheikh where he would do interviews with people for, suggestions of business deals, etc., in the lift going from his office to the gym. And then while he was in the gym doing cardio, the coach was to one side and someone else was to another side doing a 15 or 5 minute or 10-minute presentation. And that's how time important was to him and how much money he was making on an hourly basis. So every minute from when he got up to when he went to bed was used and scheduled in a certain way, apart from when he was on holiday. So that was the way that some top business brains, and again, top athletes, you're talking about $10 million, $20 million, $30 million contracts. These people are keeping you active. They're keeping you on the field. They're keeping you in shape. And they are helping those contracts getting renewed. So it's well worth, if you do it privately, well worth you spending $50,000, $60,000 a year on a coach. It absolutely is important. I would argue now, Steve, moving on a little bit about the online, in person, and something that you and I talked about, Steve, which is, I believe, something that's coming in the future. We're already seeing apps. I think we're going to now start seeing AI coaches. So for me, I would rather have, as a client, as a customer myself, I would rather work with someone once a week in person than I would online via Zoom or AI. The AIs, as we know, are not quite there in terms. They'd be great at accessing the information that's available, but I don't think an AI can quite do the personal stuff. For example, you come in stressed, an AI wouldn't recognize that. You come in, if you've missed a meal, an AI might not ask. But it is becoming incredibly sophisticated. So we will see what I feel will be virtual coaches. And again, I think this is going to work for the majority of people. But what do you think about the way that that works, Steve? Which is your preference and which would be the best if people do want a coach, they do want a trainer, with online, in person, or AI, the future reference and apps, of course? What do you think on that?
So I feel like you're more of a geek than me, but you're definitely not a geek. So when I first started hearing about AI like 2, 3 years ago, I was like, what the fuck is AI? I have no fucking clue what it even is. So,
Mm.
but what's interesting is we're seeing that slow transition to AI, like cars now,
Yeah.
have AI, and there's like cars like driverless cars now. You're seeing them starting to pop up in California, making picking up people and stuff, and it's really fascinating how you're seeing it. So when it comes to personal training, I would, I think it's a great way to get a lot of information.
Mm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that the information is good. Like you
Yeah.
could ask artificial intelligence, is eating potatoes good for you? I'm just giving an example. And it might say yes and it might say no, but like the truth is, and this is what I feel as someone who knows a thing or two about dieting, it
Yeah.
depends. If you're
Yeah.
taking that potato and you're cutting it up and you're frying it in refined oils like they do at a fast food joint, then no, it's not good for you. But if you're taking a potato and you're baking it and you're not smothering it in a bunch of, you know, condiments, and you're like you add some, maybe some coconut yogurt to it and some salt and pepper, then yeah, it's fine. They, you know, in Okinawa they eat a shit ton of sweet potatoes. Half their fucking diet is sweet potatoes, and these are some of the healthiest people in the world. You know, Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, he was, the character was from Okinawa, and they
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were very balanced, smart, healthy people, and they live 100 years old, and they eat half their diet as potatoes, but they don't smother their potatoes in crap. Like if you go to a steak restaurant and they give you a potato, they smother it in some fake cheese and tons of butter, fake butter and margarine and all that shit. That shit just clogs up your heart. So it really depends. So I wonder if artificial intelligence would understand, you know, that, and you have to
Let me
kind of
let me
just
give you an
clarify things.
example, Steve. I've just thought of two that would be funny, right? So part of the problem, as Steve quite probably suggests, is that the AI doesn't know what the fuck else you're doing. So you can literally ask Siri now, can I have a potato, Siri? And Siri will say, sure, why the fuck couldn't you have a potato? Of course you can, unless you're allergic, eat one. But they don't know what else you were doing and how you're going to cook it, Steve. So the other example would go to the opposite end, the extreme, where your AI uh, computer, phone, app, whatever else would know exactly what you've done. You wouldn't be able to hide a single thing from them. Can you imagine that, Steve? So it would be like having a PT or a coach with you 24/7. No, Joe, you can't have a potato because you had that whole bag of fries last night and then you had those donuts for breakfast this morning. And Joe can't get away from the AI. So it's kind of funny. This is where the coach client relationship is super, super important. Let me give you an example. So I've mentioned multiple times, and he's actually very good for the one-to-one stuff. He does the prepping for a competition with people, and I've seen him sit there just like a judge, low down with the client stood up. So he's looking up with the same eye line that a judge has, do exactly like Steve said earlier on in terms of posing, whether the hamstrings are coming in, whether the quads are separated, etc. And one of the things that he actually posted about this some years ago. So this is just an example. He had a husband and wife couple come to him with the idea that they were going to get into shape. And he did a package financially that worked for the two of them. So they both got diets, they both got preps at the same time. So it was diluted a little bit, as it would be if he was working individually, but nevertheless, this is the arrangement they made. And I think it was something like £700, so about $800, $900. And it was 16 weeks. So the idea would be at the end of the 16 weeks, they're in shape. So amusingly, this is what happened. The previous coach had allowed the female client to eat donuts. She said that she had some weird thyroid condition and that she'd discussed this with the previous coach, and the coach had allowed her to eat donuts because of this thyroid issue. It made no sense to everybody listening. It was just something she'd been allowed to get away with. She went with the local professional bodybuilder, and he said, no, no donuts. You want to get in shape. That's ridiculous. But the last coach said it was okay. I don't care what the last coach said. So she kicked off and wanted her money back and then posted how terrible he was online, on Facebook, on social media. And he then posted all of the comments saying, this is the ridiculous situation that I find myself in. I've done them a great fee for the two of them instead of a single fee per person. And the relationship she had with the previous coach allowed her to eat donuts for what is medical issue I can't imagine. And because I've actually given her proper prep for the 16 weeks that would get into great shape, she's kicking off because she's not allowed to have donuts, accused me of being a bad coach, and so on and so forth. And it was quite ridiculous. So sometimes in those situations, you'd have, again, this is where the personal relationship works, where you know about these nuances, you're aware of perhaps the client's failings, and you allow for that in the program. As an example, I think you talked about something me and you pre-show the last show that we did, where we were saying about people turning up late. So we would deliberately tell them the time of half an hour earlier for them, knowing they would actually turn up on time. People have had to do that with clients. I've told you about sending someone away because they never made a single appointment for training once on time, and so on. So this is where the AI stuff and the online stuff doesn't work for me, where I think the relationship with a coach or a client, in order to get the best out of both individuals, both the coach and the client, works best in person. That's not to say, because you and I do this on a daily basis, that we've helped thousands of people by this podcast, thousands of people, members on the forums, by giving advice where we can. But we know that if we worked with those people in person, it would be on another level. So that is super, super important, Steve. What do you think of that before we move on? Talking about coaching yourself. And I've actually got a big comment for you and I on this one. When you're ready.
Yeah, and this actually transitions into the next segment a little bit. And I'm going to talk about how to get free coaching. And you can come on the forum, evolutionary.org, come on our forums, and you can do a log. And logging your diet, your training, your steroid cycle, it's a great way to get free coaching. There's all kinds of guys on the forum who are ready to support you, have your back, see your day-to-day experiences, gives you tips and tricks as you go,
Yep.
adjust things where it's needed, while also supporting you the whole way. And look, at the end of the day, there's some people who don't like to be told anything. And we see that sometimes. Some people get offended. Oh, how could you tell me this? But look, at the end
Yes.
of the day, everybody has different opinions. And that's the good thing about it, is that you're getting a different perspective and a different set of eyes. So some person might tell you to adjust this with your training, or some person might tell you to adjust that, and they might have a different perspective. And at the end of the day, you can try both of their options and see which one actually works the best for you. So it's
Steve,
really,
we've
really
got
good.
we've got two degree qualified people on there. We've got one person that owns more than one gym. We've got people on there, including myself, that have won competitions in their field, whether that's a bodybuilding competition, within people that have qualified for the Americans, people that have qualified for the Canadian championships, and so on and so forth. And then you've got maybe 20 individuals that regularly post on people's logs, as well as other people that come from time to time, and of course, lots of people looking, where you've got essentially 20 sets of eyes, minimum 20 sets of eyes.
All kinds of backgrounds,
Yes,
different countries, different perspective on things,
yes,
and you're going to have a lot of different options. And the nice thing about it too is you can check. I told someone this, I think last night. I told him, I was like, because he came on with a diet question, I said, how about you go and look, you start up your own log, and you also go and look at the other logs on the
yes,
forums and look at how these guys are eating
yep,
and see their transformation and see what's working for them. And you try out some of their meals. People have pictures of their meals, people have recipes. I post recipes on my log. I try to post at least 2 or 3 recipes a month on my log. I have a log. Mobster has a log. I post pictures of things people. Someone hit me up. They're like, Steve, I never even heard of bone broth. I had no clue what bone broth was. And your log actually taught me about bone broth, and I've been doing bone broth, and it's made a huge difference in my recovery, in my joints and everything. I said, dude, that's what it's all about. Now you can start posting your recipes and help other people with something they've never heard of. And it's really, really a cool way to network and learn from each other. So definitely come on the forum. And like I said, it's free. And don't worry about being anonymous. Just block out your face, crop out your face, crop out
yeah,
tattoos, whatever that would identify you. And a lot of people do that, and it keeps everybody safe. And use a screen name, a random screen name where no one knows who it is. And look, it's the best thing you can do. We really, really encourage that. And at the end of the day, I've seen people, who've been in a really bad spot in life, and they do longs, and now it's been a year or two later, and they have completely turned their life around
yes.
from being,
Alcohol and or drugs, Steve. We've
yes.
had a couple recently. Yes,
And people who used to be like, you looked at them, you're like,
huge.
I've
Yeah,
seen people who were like overweight who are now in great shape. I've seen people who
yeah,
look like they never even touched the weight before. Now they're fucking humongous.
muscular. Yeah, yeah.
And it's been an amazing, we've seen these amazing, and that's what happens. So every one of you should definitely come and do the log. And that's a great way to get some free.
I'll
I
tell
tell
you what
people, yeah,
I'll tell you what they'll get from that, Stephen. I actually said that me and you've actually been successful in this particular regards personally, and that is mentoring. So because we can have people on there that have someone who's about to compete, and we can have someone that's competed, tell them what that's like. You and I, and I'll finish on this segment for myself, have been mentored at times. Both of us have been, myself specifically with grip competitions, but both of you and I have been elite level with over 400 plus pounds on our bench press because of people that we've been mentored by. And constantly, I still talk to people in the gym about sharing out information on SARMs, for example. That was a discussion just today before I left the gym. So we're constantly switching information around with other people that have been elite level in what they do. And we've both benefited, you and I, from having mentors well before the forums, in fact, who just gave us bits of advice that have actually ended up being incredibly useful and have driven us to be better. So in that particular way, whether you specifically have a log and only pay attention to one or two individuals, or whether you take information from all of those, it is, as I said, like having 20 sets of eyes, just offering you information, offering you advice. And it all comes, same as a mentor does, from the place of wanting you to succeed. And that's the thing that's there. A coach doesn't always do that. Sometimes it's just there for the cash. But if they really want you to succeed, and this is what they should do, because you are literally a walking, talking promotional advert for the success that they've driven you to do. Let's talk about now, Steve, some of the products from Euro Pharmacies, which we know coaches and
yeah.
trainers, etc., would
So let's,
recommend.
yeah, let me say this first. Coaches love anabolic steroids, whether you're doing an online coach or in person, because anabolic steroids work. They can
Yeah,
cut your recovery and have, instead of doing a workout 3 times a week, you can go 4, 5, 6 times a week on steroids because they cut recovery in half. They break down barriers to building more muscle and more strength. So a lot of coaches love recommending anabolic steroids for that reason, and they work. And your pharmacies have the best anabolic steroids on earth. When I first started using anabolic steroids, it was hard. It was expensive. Shipping was a fortune, like $60 to ship. It was really hard to get steroids, and you didn't know when you ordered steroids if you were going to get them or not because customs could seize them. You didn't know if when they got to you it was even legitimate steroids. You didn't know if the source was just going to steal your money. But your pharmacies, they've revolutionized the industry. They're like Amazon. They've completely revolutionized things where they ship quickly. They have great products. They have great customer service. They have very knowledgeable reps. So their steroids are amazing. So that I just like did a promo for Euro Pharmacies, but look, I'm just telling you the truth. And at the end of the day, trainers love Euro Pharmacy. So let me give you a couple steroids that trainers love to give clients. And these are some of the most popular steroids. DECA. And trainers love DECA because DECA is great for bulking, it's great for appetite increase. In Euro Pharmacies, they not only have a great DECA, but they have also nandrolone phenylpropionate, which is a shorter ester of nandrolone. DECA durabolin, of course, or DECA nandrolone decanate, which is the real term, is the longer ester. So if you want to keep this cycle 10 weeks or less, you could go with the MPP. If you wanted to do a cycle that was longer, you could go with the nandrolone decanate or the DECA. And the nice thing about DECA too, it's smooth, it's easy to inject. It doesn't come with a crazy amount of side effects if you run it properly. So I highly recommend you always run nandrolones with Proviron. So a good stack that you could start with would be running the NPP or DECA at 300 or 400 milligrams a week. You could run a little testosterone with it, and Euro Pharmacies has a ton of testosterone options. And then you could run some Proviron with it every day at 25 milligrams. So that would be a really, really good stack if you want to bulk and get appetite. Before I let you in, Mobster, I'll do the second one, and that is what I just mentioned as well, testosterone. And Euro Pharmacies is so good when it comes to their testosterone. And personal trainers love to give their clients testosterone because testosterone does a lot of things in the body. It boosts your mood, it boosts libido, it boosts your strength, it boosts your muscle mass. It does so much things in the body, especially if you've got normal to low levels of testosterone floating naturally. By using testosterone, you can really get your levels much higher. So I strongly recommend you check out the Euro Pharmacies testosterones, and they have everything, Lobster. They have suspension, which is a no ester testosterone, which you can take
Yeah,
pre-workout. They have a
yeah.
propionate, which is a shorter ester. They have enanthate, they have cypionate, they have blends, they have long esters if you want to do TRT and not inject very often. It's just crazy the amount of testosterone options they have. And generally, you want to use anywhere from 100 if you're going TRT up to 500 milligrams. And some people will use more, especially if you're competing at a big level. So your pharmacies has you covered on both. Mobster, what do you think that
Yeah, I
trainers
just
like?
what was that said. I agree with Steve. If I'm working with someone and I wanted to guarantee a certain level of success, I as a coach would make sure that you're ready for using PEDs, and I wouldn't want you to jump in straight away. And we do sometimes see that. So a responsible coach will make sure that you're trained, make sure diet and cardio is on point, etc. But when you're ready, if you're ready, absolutely, Steve. And here's the thing, guys: if you're working your ass off and you're getting good results before, then the results you're going to get with PEDs, specifically using Euro Pharmacies, is going to be that much better. That's obvious. We've talked about the gains that Steve and I have done naturally versus with pharmacological support. Absolutely, Steve. And I like the fact, for example, as Steve says, they're your one-stop shop. Injectable products, oral products, human growth hormone, peptides, which is an increasing range, and SARMs, and again, an increasing range. I just wrote down, for example, Steve, some very quick ones. If I was working with a client and I wanted great results, for example, GW, Steve, 20 milligrams a day. How many times have we seen people using Euro Pharmacies products that have had great results and rave about the energy and the fat loss and the condition, etc., they got using as part of a stack GW? Masteron, 150 milligrams, Steve. Testinamphate and tescipionate, 200 milligrams. I'm using right now for their TRT, the tescipionate. Steve mentioned the Deca, 200 milligrams, Sustanon, 250. I've run myself, and I've said this multiple times, my biggest ever body weight was very simple. I think, what was he looking at here, Steve? 1,050 milligrams, there or thereabouts. And I got the 336 pounds using Euro Pharmacies products. That's a great example. And here's something that I wanted, especially if I wanted a success and perhaps someone I could work with as a means of promoting myself and, of course, getting great results for my client. But again, only when they were ready, Steve. The recomposition effects of trend in terms of how they're going to look before and how they're going to look after. We know that it has a nutrient partition effect. So in other words, it works better. The better the diet works, the better it works. And in terms of how it works in the body, etc., and so on and so forth. So, for example, Steve, I've just looked at the treninamphate, 150 milligrams. I probably wouldn't have a new client run much more than that. But we know, when we've talked about this before, 200 to 300 milligrams is typical. We would start you on the ACE, but let's say that you can handle trend, that side effects ain't too brutal. Let's go to treninamphate and let's go at 200 milligrams, perhaps work with some sort of testosterone and have you run that for 8 to 12 weeks. That's an obvious example. Something else, Stephen, I'm just thinking of really simple again, right? So you and I've raved, for starters, someone who's new and perhaps wants to bulk up would be someone that could use the Euro Pharmacies Dynabol, 30 milligrams a day, so that's 210 milligrams a week, 4 to 8 weeks. And you and I have talked about this. If it's Gain City, I would, especially if I was starting out again, I would absolutely gain from that. I've done multiple early cycles using exactly that same dosing and exactly the same time scale and put on 10 pounds on cycle and kept 6 pounds. So if I wanted to do a before and a after with a client, especially a younger male client, early mid 20s onwards, who was a little bit underweight, and I wanted to be able to show him by hard training, good nutrition, and PEDs, and before and after transformation, maybe get some photographs taken before and after, as a means to show him what's happened, as well as arguably by arrangement with other clients, then I would take photographs of that individual £10 difference, Steve, the before of the cycle and at the end of the cycle. And even if we did this £6 kept gains on a smaller individual that had gained £6, you're going to be able to see that in a photograph. And that works really, really well for him in terms of motivation, for myself as a coach, and again, with potential future clients as well. So this is the reason, absolutely, why Steve said coaches and personal trainers love using and recommending Euro Pharmacies products because of the results that you can get. And again, you're pushing them hard in the gym. You're making sure that they're super tidy when it comes to nutrition, and then you bring in the PEDs when they're ready. So, Steve, yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else in that? I mean, I'm looking
So let
for
me give
some
yeah, there's so
peptides.
many different options. Let me give a couple more orals that a lot of personal trainers like because they can start working really fast. Orals hit your system really fast. We can start seeing results within the week. So a lot of clients like that because their customers will start feeling things quicker. So Anadrol, this is a great one for quick bulking gains at 50 milligrams a day. They're called A bombs for a reason. Another one is Anavar. Anavar, it's not going to be explosive results, but it's going to be good, clean muscle results. So a lot of coaches will want to put their clients on this because they don't want their clients to have crazy side effects. So 25 to 50 milligrams a day for up to 8 weeks is a great option. It's a great cutter, especially if the person wants to cut down, which a lot of people do. Who go to a personal trainer. So there's so many different options from Euro Pharmacies. You can go check them out. Come on the forum. We'll tell you how to get a hold of their products, and they're really tested. And as I said earlier, look, they have great reps on the forum, always there to help you. They have great products. They have great service, shipping, and their prices are fantastic. So, Mobster, we have a few minutes left. Why don't you touch on Euro Pharmacies? You use them. I've seen you use them on your log. Talk about that a little bit, and then yeah.
Well, let me, as I said, one of my best bulking stacks ever, the Deca and Sustanon I mentioned earlier on, saw me basically max out my local gym scales. I literally took a picture of the needle that had gone past the last reading, which made me 336 pounds, over 150 kilograms body weight. Um, Recently, when I've done the 410 kilo, 902 pound squat, that was on Euro Pharmacies products. When I've hit the 450 something pounds now that I've recently bench pressed, that was on Euro Pharmacies products. I've used other companies' products, and I've said about this before, and done very well on them. But my daily go-to is Euro Pharmacies. Now, look, guys, I'm just on the injectables page here. This is the way that a company is supposed to be. They have 15 ml vials, 10 ml vials. They have what's called blue tops and gold tops. I know, for example, and this is what I said on another show, Steve, about listening to customer feedback. They were removing the gold tops from the line, but people have actually said, no, we like the products you've got there. I'm looking at a blend 450 at the top right hand side of the page, Steve. So they've had to bring back the gold top products because that's what customers wanted. They like the blends. They like these things are available. Perhaps it wasn't selling as well as the blue top, Steve, but enough people wanted them brought back that the companies brought them back. At the bottom, and this is just literally on the injectables page, not on the other pages, you've got the ampules. There are still a small percentage of those PD users and Euro Pharmacies customers that like the ampules. They like the fact that they can have this single dose in the bottom of their gym bag, in the car, in the garage, wherever. They can't have this stuff sitting around the house, and they like the fact they can have this single dose, and they trust it for some reason more than they do the vials. Even though when you've got a company that I think they've been around nearly 20 something years, Steve, you can trust all of the products. I've been using their products now, Steve. I'm going to say for things like 6 years. If you come on the forums, guys, you can check out how many other people have used Euro Pharmacies products. They have, I would argue, and we've got some great reps for the different companies that we approve on Evolutionary. But I'd actually say that the reps for Euro Pharmacies are probably the best we've got. One specific one stands out as an example to the rest of us, including me and you, when it comes to certain particular things. I don't know how he does it with everything else that he does. And they've got a couple of people running logs, myself included. I'm thinking of Phil, who's been a user of the product and I know the log for absolutely ages. An amazing condition. And that's without the other people that will come and go on the forums and run logs from time to time and have used Euro Pharmacies products and rate them as an industry standard for other companies to follow. And listen, guys, what's super, super important about any of this particular stuff, whether it's working with a good coach, good nutritionist, or in this case with a company that supplies you products, so you want them to be reliable. You don't want coaches that don't turn up or cancel appointments. You want them there all the time. You want someone that's going to help you to get the success that you want. So it's super, super important you do that. Now, you can, sometimes you can afford it, Steve, sometimes you can't. So it might be a case of having someone once a month working with you that's got a good eye and just corrects things. If you can afford it, if you've got more disposable income, you can have a good coach work with you every week. If you really, really can afford it, Steve, it'd be 3 times a week. And there are deals to be made. But like we said, come onto the forums, ask us questions about coaches and clients, even ask us about some of the schemes that they might have qualified with, and we can tell you which is a good one, which is a bad one. Again, in our opinion. So come on the forums, let us know what you think about those guys. As always, please note we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcast are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.